Bonjour mes amis, hi guys. Ahead of the September Rolex 2020 releases, I wanted to review the predictions that I did as far back as November 2019, linked in the description. You can tell the frenzy is on in Hong Kong already, as second-hand prices of any Rolex are higher than ever. Given that Rolex will organize a new fair in March or April 2021, and given the risk of further lockdowns in Switzerland post-summer holidays, and therefore further restrictions on production capacity, I think they'll focus on a lesser number of new releases to make sure they can deliver them. While I have expectations about the Milgauss, the Explorer 2 and the GMT range, not to mention new dial options for the Datejust, I think the focus in September will be on the long-awaited and more present upgrade of the Submariner. My prediction was and remains, against what all other channels have said, that the Submariner must increase in size. Unlike the Datejust, the emphasis won't be on the size itself in the marketing. There's only one sub, it's the sub, and in the details they will mention a size, and that's just that, a detail for Rolex. I think most likely it will be 41mm, with more classically profiled, more narrow lugs, the 70 hours of power reserve caliber 3235, and visually I expect the relationship of the bezel to the rest to feel different, more classically proportioned perhaps. Why an increase in size? Well, why is there now a white gold 42mm Yachtmaster? Riddle me this. Why is the Sea Dweller 43mm? Riddle me that. Rolex doesn't do what you expect them to do. It does what Rolex thinks is right. Who asked them to do a two-tone Sea Dweller? They did it, and I'm yet to see one in the metal now that this novelty ID has been fully accepted after the initial frown. With the Sea Dweller pushed to 43, it leaves a bit of wiggle room for the sub, for a more contemporary, for lack of a better word, sizing. But 42mm would be too close to the Sea Dweller. Also, the case of the Yachtmaster is more voluptuous, so allowing it to feel okay at 42. So Rolex would want to stay just a notch below the size adopted by Omega on the Seamaster, which is a tad too imposing. But the most important thing about Rolex strategy is that they never let the owners of the outgoing model feel like they suddenly have an unwanted dog. If the new watch was objectively better in every way and at the same size, the current owners would feel cheated perhaps, except those who definitely love the maxi case more than the 5-digit references styling. That's what I thought made sense a year ago, that's what I think still makes sense today. Now, colors and metals. Well, that's wild guessing at this point. We all want steel, but the Super Case was first introduced in precious metals, and given the 42mm release of the Yachtmaster in white gold, a new sub could see a similar release cycle. That would be a bit of a bummer, but since I remember hearing that new orders for the steel versions were not accepted at ADs anymore, we might get lucky, if you can call it that, and go straight to the one we really want, with and or without date. Given how long we've waited and how restless customers are, they'll sell like hotcakes. If it first comes out in gold, it might come as a bit of a tasteless move given the pandemic situation. As for appointments, the current glide lock is good, but there might be further refinement of the concept. Also, a larger size watch might command a slight oyster bracelet modification to avoid the first-gen deep sea awkwardness. Now what about the rest? Let's think in terms of legacy, in terms of Rolex protecting the value of the current range. The Hulk, the Bluesy, the two-tone black, the Smurf, the yellow gold. What would make sense and what could shock people and create a new demand for something we haven't seen before? Okay, just for fun, I think that a new anniversary model with the company green would make sense given that it's 2020, but it can't be a Hulk 2. So, what about a ceramic Kermit? A Keramit? It wouldn't take away from the aluminum reference or the Hulk if they go for a black dial again, and it will keep the company green excitement going. Maybe that's something for 2021 or, more historically accurately, for 2023 or 2024. It would be cool. Now, what about two-tone, black or blue? Typically the bluesy is more popular, and if they indeed released 2 or 3 black dial references already, maybe we could see a new generation of bluesy. Now if they did, I'm sure they'd make something to the dial to differentiate it from the current references. Permuting back to a flat blue rather than a sunburst, or anything that wouldn't make recent buyers of the current bluesy feel cheated. If not, what would that do to the value of the current bluesy? Another obvious is the two-tone black. Same thinking here as the bluesy. How about bringing that in no-date format? That would be new. Or in rose gold version. That might be too soft or very fetching. I would like to note here that Hong Kong saw quite significant deliveries in the past months of the two-tone variants, as if to sell out all the remaining stocks from the factory. And then we have the Smurf. They must protect that, being such a big ticket item for deep-pocketed customers. Tudor just did a steel version with the blue Black Bay 58. I think that the Smurf might be discontinued for good for now, unless they keep the 40mm going, which I think is unlikely. Maybe a great watch to pick up while you can. It's a lot of dough, but sometimes to win big you gotta spend big. Having said that, the higher you go in prices, the smaller the audience. But then again, you tap into the big budget guys, the real players who are indeed ready to spend to differentiate from the commoners. So there's room for a new big ticket full gold piece. Who knows? Green again perhaps, white gold or red, I don't know. Finally, I'd like to mention that Rolex colors are very flash. Tudor's blue, green or red are objectively nicer. And if you're just buying a color, well, maybe Tudor is the best way to scratch that itch while keeping a low profile in the subway. I know I'm well happy with my blue Black Bay 58. So there you go, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong on all this and the new sub will remain 40mm like the GMTs, but I think the aquatic watches are headed to a larger dimension, while the GMT is more of an everyday city watch. Also, Tudor has the smaller size covered now with the 58. Maybe instead of a sub, we'll get the steel 42mm Yardmaster. That would be a kick. What's for sure is that whatever comes out, it won't be available, and in case of doubt, you can never go wrong picking up a vintage reference, like an aluminum Kermit, which will never be produced in that format again. Just try also to imagine which modern references will be tomorrow's desirable vintage hits. Which one has a unique quality and visual impact that will remain unique? I guess the already high premium Hulk will remain special, and the sellers will try to push prices to 20 grand on September the 1st. And see if it can rival the new releases, which will also hit second-hand channels pretty quickly, unless Rolex comes up with some sort of identity card perhaps that rewards buyers who keep their watches rather than flip them. I'm going to leave you with this. Let's see what September brings. Thank you guys.